Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate, and today I have a mid-year freakout tag, or rather, I would say a mid-year reflection. I'm not exactly freaking out yet. I don't think I will, but I got this idea from Laura over at Fantasy Awash. Hers was a freakout tag. Maybe she's freaking out. I don't think she was, but I decided we'll just reflect instead. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, the first prompt or question is, what is the best book I've read so far in 2024? And that would, without a doubt, be, I think, is Toll the Hounds by Stephen Erickson. This is the eighth book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. And yeah, I loved that book so much. It was an easy 5 out of 5 for me. I wasn't sure where the series would go for me after book five, because I think they all kind of bounced around for people. But book eight was essentially going to be hit or miss, and it was a huge hit. And I think from the first page, it just really landed and stuck with me. So yeah, Toll the Hounds, by far the best book I've read this year, and it's gonna stick with me forever, I think. So give it a shot. So the second question is, what is the best sequel I've read so far this year? And that would certainly be between two books. Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert, second book in the Dune series, and then Demon in White, which is the third book in the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio. Dune Messiah, I think, really elevated Dune for me because it really got into the politics and the consequences of politics. I haven't decided if I want to do a full review of that book yet, but I think that book as itself, and certainly how you follow up with the first Dune book, it just really surpassed my expectations. People said it got weird. I mean, it does kind of get a little weird, but it's never really that far out there, and I think it doesn't go too much into the sort of mental, philosophical, dreamy like stuff, but I really enjoyed it. And then there's Demon in White. This was, I think, a 5 out of 5 for me. I didn't do a full review, I think, of it, but the second book, The Howling Dark, was a 50-50 for me. I didn't really like the first half, loved the second half. Demon in White, I think, from the start was really solid and just kind of kept that same level of expectation throughout. And I haven't continued with the series yet, but I think just where it landed, the characters, how Hadrian Marlowe, who's the main character in the series, kind of grows, and what he goes through, I just think was really well done, really well done. And yeah, it was a great sequel. So that's a series I plan to continue sometime soon. The third question is new releases I haven't read yet, but I want to. That would be the most recent, what do you call it? Sun Eater series, Disquiet Gods or Disquieted Gods. That yeah, it's just the most recent release, and I want to read it at some point because I haven't continued the series yet, but plan to get there. So that's a recent release. Number 4 is the most anticipated release, and much like Laura, I have the same thoughts. I think everybody is probably feeling this in the fantasy world. The book is called The Sword of Wind and Truth. Took me a minute. This is the fifth book in the Stormlight Archive. I haven't gotten there yet, but I am, getting there right now with my current reads. So I'm on to book 3 at this point, but I'm really looking forward to book 5. I want to I want to be a part of something. I feel like I'm always reading like old books, so I want to like feel like I'm anticipating something releasing this year, and I want to be there for it. I try to do that with the Sun Eater series, but I was just too slow a reader with it. So yeah, book 5, Sword of Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson in the Stormlight Archive. Number 5 is the biggest disappointment that I've read so far. That would probably be, it was kind of hard to pick one, but I would say Alloy of Law, not because I had high expectations of it, but just probably because it's like the worst book I read this year. It was perfectly fine. I didn't really care for it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to people unless if you like really like Brandon Sanderson, but I do plan to, I think, continue reading it. Maybe I have the second book. We'll see if I actually read it. But yeah, I would say Alloy of Law, the first book in the second era Mistborn series. I just didn't really care for the characters. The writing was just kind of weird. It felt too like on the nose with the humor, and it just wasn't that funny. So that was my biggest disappointment. Number 6 is the biggest surprise of this year so far. I would say Vinland Saga by far. It's a manga that takes place during the 10th century in England, between the Danes and the Anglo-Saxons, and sort of the formation of England and Danelaw and stuff like that. And it follows a character I've talked about this series before, so I won't go too far into it, but it was just an incredibly good story of anti-war and just exploring that culture and what that, the context of those themes of anti-war and grief and suffering, essentially, of oneself and, internal anguish. I think it just did a really great job at that, and I can't recommend it enough to people. It's just one of the best stories I've read, and it really surprised me with how much I loved it. Number 7 is my new favorite author, and I think this doesn't come as a surprise. It's Stephen Erickson of Malazan Book of the Fallen. He's just surpassed my expectations of what you can do with a novel and how you can explore themes in a fantasy world that well. It's just an incredible work of art. And I love the series. I love him as an author. Tolkien has always been my favorite author, but I think that's just, I don't want to pick one or the other. I think I respect them both immensely. Tolkien is sort of my nostalgic, homey feeling comfort read. And there's certainly plenty of exploration to be done with Lord of the Rings, which I plan to do at some point. But I think just Erickson has just impressed me so much with the world building, the themes, the characters, the humor, just how he approaches a lot of these very heavy themes. I just think has been really well done, and I can't wait to finish this series. Number 8 is a fictional crush. I don't really get that, honestly. I don't have a fictional crush, but if I had to pick one, it would be Krep from Malazan. Newest favorite characters, or favorite character. I really have 2. Hellion from Malazan Book of the Fallen. She's kind of this like sergeant or captain who found herself in this position, and she's a drunk, and she's hilarious. And there's this scene in book 7 where they're being attacked, and she just finds this, she's drunk and stumbling around, and she just finds this barrel essentially and uses it as a shield, and it's like, come on. And it's hilarious. And she, I think, kind of starts a cult around her eventually, and then she also just finds a way to get everyone riled up in the town to overtake the counselor or something. She's just a hilarious character, and she grew on me a lot. I did not really follow her too much in book 6. She's kind of in that role too, but I think just in book 7 it just landed a lot more for me. And I just loved reading her sections. And a second character is Dalinar from Stormlight Archive. He's kind of a lord who lost his brother, who was the king, and he's somebody who sticks to his beliefs no matter what. And it's something I admire, at least the beliefs he has, and certainly trying to take the high ground just in certain situations and not stoop to the low levels that others would. And it's something I admire about the character, and it's something I like about him. So he's definitely one of my favorites. Number 10 is books that made me cry. Won't come as a surprise, but Toll the Hounds and Vinland Saga both definitely made me teary-eyed with just how they explored these characters and what they went through. And it hit home in a lot of ways. Number 11, a book that made me happy, probably Toll the Hounds. Again, it has a lot of nostalgic feelings to it, kind of exploring this city that you haven't really seen since book 1, but it's such a distinct city with really distinct characters, and it just made me feel nostalgic towards when I first started reading the series. Number 12 is my favorite movie or book adaptation of the year, and I don't think this really comes as a surprise, but it's got to be Dune by far. Dune Part 2. Is there anything more to be said? Number 13 is the most beautiful book I've bought this year, and I thought it was the most beautiful book I have. So I grabbed a few, and I kind of just want to show off some books that I really like in my collection. One of these I did buy this year. So the book I bought this year was Same Bed, Different Dreams by Ed Park. This is a Korean science fiction, I believe. And yeah, I just saw the cover and I was like, whoa, this seems kind of cool. It's kind of sci-fi, I believe, kind of in that one genre of fiction that claims to not be sci-fi when it's actually sci-fi. I don't like Margaret Atwood, those kind of books, I think. But yeah, I just thought this cover looked very cool and it stuck out to me. So I bought it. I haven't read it, but I bought it. Some other books in my collection that I really like, because I misread the prompt. The Pastel City by M. John Harrison. This is sort of a dystopian sci-fi set in the future, but it's kind of sci-fantasy, I believe. I just think the cover is, again, very cool 1970s kind of just mass market paperback art that is awesome. And I haven't read it. Started it. I will read it yet again. And then also we have The Power That Preserves by Stephen R. Donaldson. He is a famous fantasy sci-fi writer from the 80s, 90s, kind of today. I just thought, I found it's this hardback, I think a first edition maybe. I found it when I was in Wisconsin last year, back home. And yeah, I just thought the cover just really sticks out. And it just feels like, this is from the 70s, I think, and it just kind of, there's something about it that feels like a very classic fantasy kind of vibe to it, but I know he really tackles Tolkien and sort of explores a lot more different themes and, you know, kind of digs into and presents a different picture of what fantasy can be. So yeah, I just thought the cover was cool. And then finally, and this is kind of getting into the next question, which is what books do I really need to read this year? And I do kind of want to reflect on the year a little bit with this question too. So the books I really need to read this year / a book I want to show off is the Faded Sun trilogy by C.J. Cherryh. This is just kind of I got all three of these. They're three small books. But they're kind of from the 70s, and I just thought the cover art was cool yet again. A goal of mine was to read more women authors. I haven't really done that yet, to be honest. That is in the plan, though. I want to finish Malazan. Sorry, there's somebody moving right now. So I want to finish Malazan, and I want to get caught up with the Stormlight Archive, just because these are big series. And I'm trying to focus more on one or two books at a time versus like churning through so many. It just helps me enjoy the book more, I think. So I should be finished up with Malazan in August and then caught up with Stormlight by October-ish before the fifth book is released. I don't remember when that's being released. I think it's December. Could be wrong. So yeah, I plan to kind of finish those two series, catch up with them, and then I can really dig into C.J. Cherryh, Ursula K. Le Guin, and also I do want to get to Lois McMaster Bujold, I believe is her name. From what I understand, these are just, and I've read probably 100 books of the not 100 books, 100 pages of the Faded Sun trilogy, and they're just a bit slower and kind of explore the characters a bit more versus a plot. So I just want to be able to focus on that and not have these kind of two overhanging fruits, large fruits like Malazan and Stormlight kind of in the back of my head being like, you should finish these. So that is a goal of mine this year, is to read more women authors like those three. And then, yeah, I want to just dive into it more. And then just to kind of reflect on the year so far, I think I've read like 13 books or so, which honestly I'm happy with. Yeah, I just appreciate the fact that like I've taken more time to kind of like appreciate a book and read one book at a time or two. I got in the habit of reading like four at a time, and it just got to be way too overwhelming. So yeah, I like what I've read, and I plan to finish some of these massive series and then start more massive series. Oh, and then I also want to read more self-pub authors. I have a few lying around, and I have some on like an ebook, so those will come eventually too. Yeah, and that's it, I think. So that's kind of my mid-year reflection. Feel free to let me know down below what you think on some of these series, some of these books I mentioned, and just sort of your own thoughts on your year so far with your reading. Make sure to comment, like I said, like and subscribe if you want, and I will talk to you soon.